So I'm so pleased to be here to help celebrate the Winter Show with this panel that we're calling Design Firsts. The word feels particularly resonant to me right now, and not just because my employer has dibs on it. Given the trials of this past year, I think we're all in the mood to look forward, to think positively, and to start afresh. There's nothing like that first love, that first kiss, that first look that makes you feel like a whole world of opportunities is opening up for you. So in that spirit, we've gathered together three amazing design talents to share their thoughts on firsts. Each of them is not only extremely well versed in the realm of the decorative arts and the rich material on offer at the Winter Show, enjoying its first digital iteration, but they're known for a kind of joyful approach to luxurious interiors that feels very much in tune with what we're all seeking in our homes right now. So before we dive into the talk, let me first share some brief introductions. In no particular order, well, I guess ladies first. I'll start with you, Katie. So according to Architectural Digest, Katie Ritter's interiors are a richly layered extravaganza of exotic patterns and bright hues peppered with venerable antiques. Throughout her career, Katie has designed the interiors of Japanese pavilions, Palm Beach estates, Swiss chalets, Park Avenue apartments, and downtown lofts, which have been published in basically every magazine you could name. The subject of two monographs, Rooms and last year's More Rooms, she's also the author of the best-selling A House in the Country, written with her husband, architect Peter Penoyer. It's a book and a project that I've become obsessed with during these housebound times of COVID, and it's a remarkable place up in Millbrook. So I strongly urge everyone to check it out. It's unlike any house you've ever seen. Next up, David Scott. For David Scott, each project is a journey, and each client is invited to join a collaborative process of creative discovery. With almost 30 years of experience, David has created diverse and artful interiors in an array of styles for clients in New York City, the Hamptons, Miami, Palm Beach, and beyond, all the usual places, as we like to say. David's interiors, which gracefully meld the timeless elegance of the past with today's modern aesthetic, have been widely published in magazines and in his book, Outside the Box, an interior designer's innovative approach to creating chic and comfortable rooms, which celebrates 11 of his residential projects. David's an alum of the New York School of Interior Design, on whose board he currently sits, along with the Kips Bay Boys and Girls Club. A resident of both Manhattan and Sag Harbor, his homes celebrate a mix of vintage and modern furnishings and an ever-expanding collection of contemporary art. And then last but not least, Robert. After decades of countless notable commissions, starting with a 20,000-acre Mexican estate centered on a 60,000 square foot hilltop palace for legendary financier Sir James Goldsmith, Robert Couturier continues to occupy a spot at the very top of his profession, with projects in the US, Europe, South America, and Russia. His name has become synonymous with continental and international style, although he's been spending many of his days of late in his much celebrated home in northwestern Connecticut, although he's in New York today, as are all the panelists. Born and raised in Paris, where he studied decorative arts at the École Commando, Robert added his own inimitable and witty perspective to his deep understanding of classical design. And his heroes remain a jaunty lot, including Renzo Mongiardino, Charles Lebrun, Serge Roche, Robes-John Gibbings, Robert Mallet-Stevens, and Jean-Michel Franck. Not bad for a kid who studied German in school. That's me, not you, Robert.
I did too.
Decor, Robert believes, above all else, must be appropriate to the architecture, to the clients, and to the setting. He doesn't view his interiors as stage sets, no matter how grand. Instead, his spaces are meant to be as comfortable and functional as they are aesthetically pleasing. So those are short bios of three seriously accomplished talents and who could probably have books written about them. So let's just start off. First question. I'm going to sort of ask you, what was the last time, when was the last time you experienced love at first sight? And I'm talking about a piece of furniture or an object or an artwork. Yeah. So Robert, you're to my right, so why don't you start us off?
Okay, so this summer, I go to Biarritz during the summer, and there's an antique dealer there, which was lovely, and I've been buying stuff through the years through him. And then he told me, he said, I have something for you that you might be interested in. And it's from the Petit Trianon. And I thought, oh God, that is a dangerous thing. And he said, well, I'll bring it to you. So he came to the house, and then he had this ugly, brown paper bag. And he said, can I take it out? And I said, trembling, of course, take it out. So he took it out. And there was this, it's a brûle parfum, it's a tall brûle parfum, which was meant for Trianon, and there were probably many of them. And it still has the M&A, the Marie Antoinette sign on it, and it's incredibly beautiful. And of course, he took it out, and I lost my breath, and I said, okay, which is really bad because it puts you in a very bad negotiating point. And it hadn't told me the price. And I said, okay, I have to buy it. And I bought it. And I look at it every day. And it's really, one of these testimonies of time, which are so precious, which I love on all regards.
That's amazing. So, after a lifetime of appreciating beautiful things, you still encounter things that take your breath away.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Your taste change.
David, you have
so,
love at first sight?
Most recent love at first sight was a suite of Geoponti black ceramics. I collect ceramics, and I saw them at a distance, and the silhouettes of them just spoke immediately to me. And to have the entire suite of 5 of them intact, perfect condition, I just walked over and I just had to have them. So I got them, and clients have come in and want to buy them, and I usually sell everything, but I'm not ready to sell them yet. So that was
my give it to a museum, David.
Yeah, they really could. They're so perfect. Really, they're just flawless. So, and Geoponti is just an exquisite Italian modernist designer who, just the way he would draw a line is just incredible. Every silhouette is just amazing. So I love them.
Was so prolific and just created such a broad body of work that there's, I'm just an amateur sleuth, but I feel like I make new discoveries about him all the time. So very exciting.
He's wonderful.
Katie, your love at first sight?
Well, last year, Peter and I went to Stockholm, and I was shopping for clients, and I found a Gustavian game table, and I showed it to my client, and he said, yes, I'll take it. I shipped it home, and the more I looked at it, the more I thought, God, I love this. I never do this, but I kept it.
Did you explain it to your client, Katie?
You just tell him that it got lost lost at sea?
It was broken. It came broken, unrestorable.
You didn't send an invite to this talk to your client, I hope so.
Uh-oh.
All right, so let's dive deeper back in time. Can we talk about your first sort of encounter with a beautiful object? You could go back to childhood. When did you first, sort of develop this sensitivity to the sort of design objects around you, and what was that, if you can recall it? I'll start with you again, Robert.
Oh, the funny thing is that the one thing that I was the most attracted to when I was, 16, 17, 18, to being aware of design and object, because through, the way I grew up, I was always around 18th century furniture. And so I wasn't particularly interested in them. And it's actually an Eileen Gray armchair, which absolutely, one of those, sort of chaise longue that she had in lacquer, which I just thought there was, it was so the opposite of what I knew, and it was an aesthetic that had nothing to do with the aesthetic that I related to and that I knew. And I felt I thought it was the most wonderful thing. And I bought it.
Yeah.
And now.
As a teenager.
Mhm.
And wasn't Eileen Gray sort of forgotten at that point, or was she?
At that time, it was beginning to sort of be more known. It was not, as known as it is today, but it was. And actually, I told my mother, I said, I need the money to buy this armchair. And she said, are you absolutely of your mind? It's an armchair for a boat. What are you going to do with this? And I she didn't want to give me the money, so I had to go to my grandfather, who just gave me money. But and then I've sold it since then. But I should have kept it actually.
Because you sold it to Yves Saint Laurent, and then he ended up selling it for a gazillion
for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you know what I did actually, which is really bad? I bought a copy last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is so ridiculous. I'm 60, I'm old. I should not have copies. I should have the original. Why did I have the original when I was 18? Makes no sense.
Well, you should not have copies for a variety of reasons, which we won't go into here. But
which we know.
All right, I'm not going to reprimand you in the first minutes of our talk, Robert. Have you turn on?
No, listen. I admit it's a copy, so I'm not going to make it believe that it's not.
Great. David, you dig into your childhood, 17 or earlier? Is there?
So a couple of things come to mind. One was when I was very, very young at my grandmother's home. I had two really wonderful grandmothers, one who was very kind of glamorous and the other one who was really down to earth. And so that really had the best of both worlds. And the glamorous Hungarian one was kind of Jaja-like, and she had a collection of porcelain figures like Meissen and other things like that. And I had really not seen anything like that because I grew up in a, contemporary home, Danish modern furniture, and we didn't have anything like that. So I just looked at them and they were just so exquisitely formed. And of course, I don't really love them, but in my current life as a designer, or even probably through most of my life as a designer, but I found that it made such an impression on me, the quality and understanding what it took to create that. And so it gave me an appreciation of the fine decorative arts and the idea of collecting, because she had a lot of them, and could touch them, and it was very particular. But
and the way they were displayed.
They were displayed. It was in the dining room, displayed. Yeah, and you just weren't allowed to. It was very, you had to dress with a jacket, kind of thing around her. So the other thing that made a really big impression on me as a youngster was we had a family that lived down the street from us who were Shanghainese, and their entire home was filled with Mies van der Rohe, Knoll, all the perfect modernist furniture of the time, everything. It was just amazing. And I had also not seen it because I was, really hadn't seen anything quite as edgy as all of that as a small child. I'm talking about 6 years old, So these things definitely made impressions on me. And of course, I've pursued a little bit more of the idea of craft and modernism than Meissen figurines, but I think we have to have a great appreciation for all of these things and all the decorative arts. But that made a big impression on me, those things.
Yeah. Katie, you?
Well, we used to go to Florida I grew up in California, every Christmas to my grandmother's house. And my grandmother had a wonderful Laverne coffee table, and I just
love those.
Tiny. And I really use Laverne coffee tables, in not every project, but I just have such an affinity for them, and I'm sure it's from my grandmother. I didn't inherit that piece. I inherited something even better, but it's just something that I have always loved from my grandmother.
So you still put Laverne, you try to put Laverne in your projects?
I do. I use Laverne a lot.
So do you think it's interesting, though, that all of us thinking about things that we saw from our grandparents?
I want to ask you, it's interesting because I remember first seeing Laverne in Christina Grajales' gallery 20, 30 years ago. She's not a winner show dealer. I probably shouldn't have mentioned her, but I love her. I love her. So, but,
wonderful.
and I've never responded to it. And it's funny, I didn't like it then, and I still don't like it now very much. And I know, people like you who have extraordinary taste, and it's one of those sort of challenges every time I do look at it. It's Paul Evans. I just try to sort of get it, which I think is also the wonderful thing about design and how you respond or don't respond sort of at first sight. You can also learn to love something, even if it's not a love at first sight sort of thing. But Katie, I want to ask you one question. So what did you inherit that's even better, if I can ask?
Giacometti table, a beautiful Giacometti table with, the animals are on it's 4 dogs' heads, and it has deer underneath. It's with all the animals on it.
Beautiful.
It's so, I just love it. I love it.
That's it's wonderful.
Yeah, timeless, right? It can go in any interior. It doesn't matter what it is. The Giacometti table fits.
Yeah.
So Robert, you've already answered this question, what your first purchase was. You David and Katie have talked about what you first admired, but can you say what sort of your first, when you sort of stretched to buy something that you loved and knew you needed to have?
Well, I remember vividly buying, I was at a Wendy show, I think it was, at the Armory, and I saw beautiful Austrian Biedermeier armoire that was just the wood and the quality of it was really quite beautiful, and had this wonderful patina, and I just fell in love with it. And it had pride of place in my living room, my first New York apartment, and I fitted out the interior while still keeping the back of it and storage for TV, because at the time that's what we all did back in the early 90s. We put TVs in armoires. So, and that was my first real major purchase, and I still have it. Now it's in a guest room, but
you still live with it.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Biedermeier for me was also love at first sight, and it's fallen somewhat out of fashion, although I don't necessarily believe that. It just I loved it, and I continue to love it or respond to the woods. And
it came into fashion very abruptly in 1988, practically 86, 88, and disappeared 10 years later.
Bernd Geckler and other dealers, really.
Even Didier Aron had it. And
Didier Aron, all these wonderful dealers, really put them out front.
And Angus Wilkie is the one that who really,
Yeah, he wrote a book on
Biedermeier. And what was his name? The other dealer, Smith. Niall Smith.
Oh, Niall Smith.
Niall Smith, Niall Smith, Angus Wilkie, and then because Angus worked for Niall.
Yeah.
And then he opened his shop on Grand Street, and I remember buying big Biedermeier pieces in 1988 that were actually very expensive, and now nobody wants them at auction. It's so weird.
It all comes back around, though. Well,
I don't think it does, David.
You don't?
No.
You think no one?
Look at all the furniture that the robber barons collected.
Yes.
And then they bought for millions of dollars in Europe and brought over in ships and full of them. Nobody wants them.
Yeah.
This thing doesn't go back. You have all these 16th or 17th century cassonets, and
no one wants
I think there's a point where things go completely out of fashion.
There's also always the hope that things will be rediscovered, and I think that's.
But think about it. I think people are different physical shape. Who can sit on a Louis XV armchair properly? Nobody chooses that to sit on. You sit on the sofa.
But haven't you all bought chairs that are purely sculptural that have
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Of course.
that nobody can ever sit on?
Of course.
Yeah.
But it's us.
They're objects, objet in works of art, actually. There's nothing
Yes,
like
totally.
a beautiful silhouette of an amazing odd chair
Mhm.
to put in a room. I mean, I think almost every room in my home has one of those that you don't really sit on.
But the worst is buying right now during COVID online and not sitting in it, and then getting the chairs, all 16 of them, and realizing they're too shallow to sit in.
You are so right. It's this buying online, which now we all have to do, is wrenching because the piece arrives and you think, shit.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do once you
So
have it.
I have a clue for you. Ask the dealer to take a photograph or a video sitting in the chair, so you can see the proportion of that person. They have to tell you how big they are, and then that's what we do now. And so we get some inkling of where they're falling, but you can't tell the pitch of something, and you can't tell real comfort.
Yeah,
You can tell
but David,
proportion.
but sometimes you buy, a cabinet at auction, and you have your, you have the report, the condition report, you have everything, and then the cabinet arrives, and it's actually in appalling condition. What do? You call Sotheby's and you say, I'm going to return your cabinet for $250,000 because it's in bad condition. No, and then you have your client in front of the cabinet, and the client says, "Well, who's going to pay for the $25,000 of the restoration?" And it's I think it's getting more and more difficult to buy things like that, and I think there's nothing like seeing something.
Well, COVID is preventing that, but I think the world has shifted digitally pre-COVID, and it's definitely remaining. It's going to remain digital after that.
But
so.
You know what I did one day? I bought a pair of 16th century, early 17th century Baroque mirrors that I wanted to put on either side of a fireplace in a room, and I thought they were, I don't know, 2 meters tall and 1 meter wide, and I bought them really quickly, and they arrived and they were completely diminutive. Like a complete cretin with these things.
Read those dimensions when you
read those dimensions and put them on drawings, because it's just not going to be what you think it is.
That's shopping digitally 101. You need to read the dimensions. But David, that's a good point. Like, put somebody, stand next to it, sit in it.
You have to get clever, to assure that that it is at least some kind of discernment, beyond just looking at the photograph of it. Particularly now, photographs are retouched and changed, so then you get the real look of it because they're actually they're going to sit in it. So, but I agree with you completely, Katie. It is a huge issue, comfort, and not being able to have clients sit in things. But that will change soon. The winter show will be back in full force. So we'll be able to walk it all vaccinated, and so we'll all look forward to that.
That's right, and we'll just stop. Don't buy any seating pieces. And Robert, you stay away from mirrors. But there's a whole wide world of design out there that's perfectly safe to do online.
Listen, I am so obsessed with objects and styles and things that I try to convince clients that actually very comfortable. I said, no, it's very comfortable. Yeah. And you think, no, it's not. I said, yes, it is. It is very comfortable.
You just force them into it.
Exactly, push them into it. Said, grow fat. You'll stick in there.
You'll learn to love it.
You'll learn to love it. You'll see your children will love it.
So that leads me to my question about working with clients, and sort of, what's the first thing you tell clients other than you'll love it? What do you tell them when you sort of meet them about what you can do for them? It's kind of your first pitch. I mean, you're also well known. They come to you already knowing kind of what the package is, but you must have something that you all feel that they need to know, that's essential to like working successfully with you or with them.
I don't know about you guys. I think to me it's more what to know about them,
Yeah,
that you get into the relationship and you know you're going to be able to survive it. I think more so than what they're not learning from you. I think, because we're all fairly public, so they know most things about us. But we don't know anything about them. You don't know what the relationship within the husband and the wife is. You don't know. It's crucial to know how they are.
So what's the first
'Cause-
thing you want to know about the clients? What are you looking
oh,
for when you're first meeting them?
I think you,
kindness and
yeah,
openness.
Katie?
well, hear about the how they live and and just learning about how they live and where they live and getting to know them, like Robert says, just digging deep into hearing their likes and dislikes. And you want to have fun too, and like Robert is saying, you want to get along with them. And I think you learn a lot. I mean, especially over the years, after we've done it for so many years now, you get a pretty good feeling, really quickly.
You do.
Especially,
And I think,
especially watching how they interact, as a couple. I think, and whether they're late to the meeting, whether they, all kinds of behaviors. I think I really do observe a lot of their behaviors. And I think, one of the things that I try to do is tell them that this is all about them. We're going to digest it all. We're going to create this for you. I'm going to do everything. I'll be your advocate. And I think that's a really important part of what designers do. And we're not, we're often thought of as people who just spend money and, haphazardly or, have no care about that. And I think that's quite the contrary. I think that we really take our jobs, seriously, and we want to provide value and advocate for our clients and make sure that we're looking out for them, that they're buying the right things, that they're treated the right way, and that they get the service, because really, in the end, it's so much about service. I mean, really, so many talented people out there that just can't deal with the service component of what we do. And that really separates, design firms, I think, successful ones, because they can absolutely service clients and keep them happy. And then you get, referrals and you get repeat. I have a client right now, we're going to work on our 9th project together, nine or 10 projects, I think. It's a wonderful thing. It's just the best thing in the world. There's no learning curve. It's just beautiful. And I think that comes from a level of respect too. You really need to instill respect. If someone is disrespectful towards you, stop it right then and there. Don't sit back. That's what I would tell every young designer.
God, David, you're so right. But sometimes
don't
you have sort of the clients who come to you and then they've been recommended by other people, and they say you have to have them, they're going to be so good, blah, 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 and you have this weird feeling that actually it's not going to work out. And then you feel, no, if they've been told they're so good, you really should. And then
right.
You
have
do
like
it,
a little war inside yourself, right? You're going,
and it's always a mistake. Yeah. Always, if at this point in time, if we know that we're not going to get along with somebody, we won't. And no matter what's going to happen, it won't be able. And I think the people don't realize that how incredibly personal this work is. We all have personal relationship with our clients, and that with what the work that we do, we can't just do it. It's a business,
It's intimate, truly intimate.
Totally. Totally.
First impressions, to stay with the theme, first impressions matter
yes,
with the client.
Hugely.
Well,
they do. They do.
I think what you all do is, I've never been one to just think you shop or it's frivolous what you do. You have to have so many skills as an interior designer, and I think not least of which is sort of being, like psychotherapist or very psychologically in tune with your clients' needs and wants, how to give them what they want, but also how to figure out how to make them want what you can give them. And that's that's salesmanship or whatever you call it. I mean, it's psychology. So I wonder, has sort of the remove that you now have with current clients because of the you know, the fact that you're basically doing Zooms with them? Does that make your job harder? Has it simplified what you do? Anyone
So
can
I
jump in?
can state that
Okay.
one of the things that if you have an existing relationship with the client, it's going to go fairly smoothly. I think
I agree.
you adapt and you're able to really understand each other. I think new clients that you get during COVID, and which I have, you need to try to establish a relationship, and it's not easy. It is not. You you can't read real body language. You can't kind of get the nuances of how they behave, how they sit, how they like to live. You know, we are going to clients' homes. We are meeting with them masked, and you know, we're doing that. But I think that you know the Zoom part of it. You know, you have to orchestrate everything, right? You have it's similar to a presentation that we might have in our office, or but it's a little like we're FedExing packages filled with things, and we have duplicates, and we're touching and going like this. You know, do you see this? And you know, so it is definitely challenging. But I think that you know we're very resourceful designers. That's really who we are. We're all about how do we solve problems. You know, that's really what it is. So for us, I mean, it's hard, but I don't think it's impossible. You know?
Katie,
Clients are really understanding too. I have a weekly architecture meeting, and there's always a lot of us on the phone call. I mean, sometimes it's awkward for me because, you know, because like you have to mute and then unmute, you've forgotten that you've muted and that kind of thing. And then there are all these little young whippersnapper kids who are just boom, boom, boom so quick. So it's been really fine. I mean, I'm in my office every day. I fly, I go see clients. I have clients who have not come to the city since this all happened, but it's really been surprisingly seamless, honestly.
Interesting.
I agree.
Hmm.
I think it's difficult, as David says, very difficult for new clients. Because part of having on knowing who you're going to have to deal with is being with them only for a meal or something. It's just and not to have that experience is difficult. It's also you can't sort of be who you are with a mask on your face, you know, meeting somebody in an apartment. And so you can realize what the shapes of the apartment. But we are so much also about body language. Is that, you know, even facial expressions. We've learned to read, you know, if it's going to work out with the client or not by just the way that they react to what you say.
Yeah.
So when you don't see the reactions, you don't see the facial expressions, it's incredibly difficult to translate it.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe some people will say that they love blue if they don't, but if you showed them the blue and then it's their face reacting to the piece, then you know that actually not being true. And so you know this is not what you're going to do. But when you have a mask on, it's very difficult, and it's a complicated thing. But with existing clients, it's actually easier, frankly, because you go truly to the essential, to the bottom line. You do whatever, you know, you don't waste time, and it actually works, and everybody knows what it is about. But it's the new clients that are more difficult, I think. Especially that, you know, when you start a job with a client, it's 2 years, it's 3 years. So you can't make a mistake and just get with somebody you hate, because it's going to be a horrible experience. And then once you've begun it and you want to get out of it, it's not an easy thing to do. Plus it's perilous and it's very expensive. So, and I've made that mistake many, many, many times.
Okay, so we were talking about how it's important to trust your first instincts on the client, or let's getting back to sort of first impressions of objects. I mean, I was talking about my Laverne reaction. Are there objects, Katie, is there something that you initially didn't like, couldn't understand at all that you've grown to love?
Well, I decorated my parents' house in Woodside, California, and my father bought a Dwayne Hansen lookalike.
Oh, really?
And it was a police officer. with his badge. We called him by his name. I forget his name. But, you know, my father, he buys things and, you know, what am I going to do with it? So I put it right in the front entry. But the thing is, you know, when I fly in to California, it's always nighttime. And I scream every time I walk in that door because I forget the front door. But I'm, you know, I've kind of grown to like it, you know, because it's just so silly and ridiculous and, you know, unusual.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the work and I've enjoyed many museum shows of that work, but I think it would be challenging to live with it.
Yeah.
David, have you grown to love something?
Well, you know, usually I don't grow to love the things that I have a first impression that I don't like. I generally am pretty true to that. But I do learn to work with them. So I think there's a big distinction between loving it and working with it. So in my, I was thinking about, I remember very early on in my career, I had a very kind of particular client who, she was a collector, and she, of the many, many, many things she collected, there was a collection of lunch boxes. And it was, I walked in and I saw these lunch boxes in this beautiful Georgian colonial in Scarsdale. And it was just, you know, so regal, the house. And here's this collection of lunch boxes. And I was just, and she's like, well, we have to organize them and put them in on shelves and what, and I just was like, well, what I thought, how am I going to work with this? So what we did is we put them in the mudroom and lined the walls with them and almost created a room of these lunch boxes. And it actually worked, but I can't say I still love the lunch boxes. I don't. But we figured out a way to, you know, deal with them in a clever way and still display them and respect the fact that she collected them. And then from there, we went on, and then they had to move. They moved to a home out west. And then I relegated, it was a giant home, it happens to be in my book. And that house, we decided to, they had a basketball court and a skybox, you know, to watch basketball from or whatever. So we put them in a similar fashion, but in the back behind you in there. You know, I was trying to, you know, away from all of the amazing art collection that had been assembled over the years. So, but she didn't let go. She was very true to things that she loved. Yeah. She didn't dispose of things that she loved. She said, I still love these, you know, so I kind of respect that. You know, I just didn't care for them personally. But Katie, you liked lunchboxes?
I do. You mean with like farm scenes?
Yeah, like when we were kids, you know, the cartoon ones, all the different.
Well, I like the charming ones that looked like a barn. That's what mine was. It was a metal barn painted red with the cows and the dogs. And
These weren't that nice. These were like Josie and the Pussycats.
Okay.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Robert, I'm sure you've worked with lunchbox collections, Robert, right? Tell me about that.
No, one day I had a client who came to me who bought this giant house, an 18th century house, which was incredibly beautiful. And he said that he had a beautiful collection of furniture to put in there. And I was, of course, very interested, thinking it would be Cresson, Riesner, and all that. And then he showed me his collection. It was a collection of 19th century palace furniture that was done probably, you know, for, you know, sort of all fake. And I was looking at this with utter revulsion. And actually, I was a much greater snob when I was early on in my career than I became later. And I was looking at this, like, thinking, oh my God, how could you have this? You know, there were like plaques that were enamel plaques of Bellotto paintings and things. It was so ugly. And I said, what do you think? I said, I think it's very interesting. And then I looked at the plans of the house. I said, okay, fine. I told him, I said, we're going to put it all upstairs in the attic. We'll make a huge gallery in the attic where all that furniture can go in. And the rest of the house, we can buy real 18th century French furniture. He didn't think it was funny, and he fired me. But the thing is, it's like, I'm sorry, I just couldn't make it, you know. But I learned to, I mean, Jeffrey, my husband, collects, you know, early 18th century American furniture, and he's incredibly strict in his taste. For me, you know, coming from France, you know, the first time I saw him, he said, "Oh, I have a piece of 18th century American paneling." And I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be something beautiful with gilding and all of this. And he shows me, so like planks of painted wood. And I'm looking at it and say, "You don't like it?" I said, I don't know. And then, so I had to learn, you know, to appreciate. And now I do, and I love it. I still think it's utterly uncomfortable, and it's really it's so sober and so strict and so pared down, which is an aesthetic that isn't really my aesthetic. But I understand it, and I admire it, and I think it's incredibly beautiful. It's in its own thing, but it wasn't something.
And you have it.
I've learned to love it.
And you have it in a separate house on your property, though.
Yeah, we have it in 2 different houses that I never go to. Yeah. But I can recognize it's beautiful. No, I go to once in a while when I walk the dogs.
I love Americana, and I Robert, I want you to start to integrate key pieces into your. I think it can work. I'm gonna come consult on your design.
Come consult. But you see, the thing is that you learn with American furniture. I mean, beautiful, this early furniture. It's perfectly proportioned for the rooms for which it was intended. Because these rooms were low ceilinged and they were really pared down. So the pieces of furniture work there beautifully. But if you put them in a different surrounding and they can look a little awkward, because if you have very high ceilings, they look crushed. If you're, you know, so they're very delicate also in the way that they are proportioned. So it's a difficult thing to do. It's more difficult to use very, very good American furniture than it is to use French furniture, frankly. You know, French furniture you can use anywhere. But a really beautiful American furniture, I think, requires some very careful thought.
So speaking of American furniture, let's talk about the winter show. Can you all share memories, because it was such a mainstay of the show? You know, of course, when I first started going to it years ago. Now, of course, the offerings are much more broad. And but can you all remember the first time you visited the show and what struck your fancy then? Katie, I'll start with you.
Well, I have been going forever. When I was working for the magazines, we used to always go to the Winter Antique Show. But for me, I've really, you know, since they've included 21st century furniture, antiques, the last 4 years, I've really been buying a lot. I'm going to show you this picture. It's the cover of my book. And these are decoys. They're from Robert Young. And the architect designed a curved wall, and I thought, what am I going to hang? The client wants art on this curved wall, so that was the perfect thing. I don't know, I always find something at the Winter Antique Show, and I love. We were talking about Angus Wilkie. Angus always spends so much time with everyone who comes through and explaining exactly what everything is, where it came from, and I don't know. I over the years, it's just always a highlight for me. I've always loved the Winter Antique Show.
You know, Robert Young, I think, has been exhibiting there as long as
yes,
I recall. And David, your first time at the Winter Show?
So I think it was back in the early 90s. I think I was a student at the New York School of Interior Design, like maybe 1990, just before graduating. And, you know, I was intimidated the first time I went to the Winter Show. It was called the Winter Antique Show then. I kind of felt like it was museum-like then, in a way. It didn't feel that tangible to me as a young designer. But I recall going from booth to booth and speaking to various dealers, and they were such experts in their particular fields that what struck me the most was that this was one of the greatest learning experiences you could ever have, was to stop, admire an object or something, and then talk to the dealer. And the amount of knowledge, they love to educate, you know, as long as there isn't an onslaught of people. But I think that that's really one of the greatest things about the winter show, is that the dealers are so engaged. And I remember not so long ago, you know, having a client that needed to be educated, needed to be, you know, this to be discussed. Why is this thing worth this? And after the discussion with the dealer, they came around and said, you know, I really understand now. So really big part of what we do, I think, is bringing that all together. You know, the idea of the original collector of it, right? The dealer who's so passionate about it, and then the process in which it ends up in someone's home. So I think that for me, that's my greatest impression of the winter show, is that kind of engagement that has really been really wonderful.
Yeah, I understand the intimidation factor, but it is also, it's like going to a museum, but once you can sort of get over that small hump, you know, it's a museum where you can touch the pieces, pick them up, turn them over, talk to the, you know,
Like
to the expert, and learn all these things. So it's
like an auction house. You know, the other thing, people were so intimidated that there's nothing, you actually could take the thing apart practically, you know? So those things are all, they're really great learning experiences to be able to touch in that way. So hopefully we'll be back doing that.
You get over your intimidation, and now you can actually shop it too.
Oh yeah, now there's no intimidation anymore.
And Robert, I don't imagine you've ever been intimidated by anything in your life, but tell me about your first experience at the...
Not by the antique show, but you know, I went there the first time in 1979, January 19. At the time, actually, because the winters were so bad, there was always a snow, sort of always thinking that there was going to be a snow day or snow something. And you know, the one thing that actually I found is that when you go to antique dealers, you choose the antique dealers. So you know what you're going to see, because, you know, you go to Didier Aron in Paris and you see French 18th century furniture. It's not. But when you went to the antique show the first time I went, it was the diversity that actually also I found incredibly surprising and very interesting, because there are many things there that were shown that I'd never, you know, had any particular relationship with. So we had, at the time, there were very few French dealers. There were like 2 or 3, and then mostly was American dealer, Americana. But you also had rug, you had antique fabric with Cora Ginsberg, and I remember buying stuff from Cora really early on, and it's really sad, because today things have really changed, and there are many dealers that you saw then that you don't see anymore, because what they sell isn't something that what people want truly. So either they can't really afford to go to the show anymore, but there are things like that that you no longer see. So to me, I think the diversity was something that I found really exciting and really fun. And it's good also to have, you know, Philippe Perrin on one side, and then you have Young on the other side, and then you can go from one to the other and see, oh, that's interesting how things relate to one another. And I don't think you can do that when you go to antique dealers, because they're also specific. So I think these shows are immensely important because they broaden your view, and as David said, it's something that your clients learn from. And you know, they might have wanted something and then go to the show and want something else. I've seen clients being completely taken over by antiquities, which they had never seen before or never been interested by. And then you go because you have to show them a cabinet, and then the stand next door is antiquity dealer like Kleptron in Switzerland. And then they go look at it, they said, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And then they get into it and they think about, you know, where could I put that, and why is it so expensive? And you talk about the price, and you forget about that cabinet that everybody has seen before, and you go and you buy an antiquity. So there is this excitement also, which I think is really wonderful. And I love that in most antique shows. And I think the Winter Antique is that. And the Winter Show, sorry, is that. And I think, and Maastricht as well.
I think, you know, also
Maastricht bigger.
as design has changed and, you know, the spaces are now, you're designing with pieces that are contemporary and pieces from the
Yes.
mid 20th century and, you know, an 18th century piece. So it makes sense that, you know, a fair would be more appealing the more, you know, diversity and breadth, and
Yes.
especially if it's at a certain caliber. So I think that's what's exciting about the evolution of the Winter Show. And so you sort of answered this, but you've gone with clients. I mean, you find this a great learning experience, and
Clients have gone by themselves, you
Okay.
know, and gone there and called you from the show on a Sunday at 10:30 and said, "Oh, I'm at the show. What do you think about that?" I said, "Excuse me, I'm not awake yet." And
you always go.
yeah,
So I
but
want
you
to,
do. I mean,
yeah. Well, I want to ask you all maybe a last question, which is, what would be the first object or thing, inanimate object, not a living object, that you would remove, you know, take with you if you had to run from a burning house, as the saying goes. So, David, you want to start?
Sure. I don't even have to hesitate. There is a small painting that my mother did as a child. She was probably 6 or 7 years old, of a lighthouse and a little seascape with rocks. It must have been up in Maine or Massachusetts somewhere. I think she told me it's Massachusetts. And it's just stayed with me my entire life. And it's my most treasured possession. It's not framed. I pick it up, I look at it, I think of her amazing kind of just natural talent that she has. She did not become a painter, other than she did paint all the time. But that's a very special thing to me. In fact, we just had her birthday party, and a Zoom birthday party, 86th birthday party. And what did I do? I took the painting and I put it and I said, "Mom, my most treasured possession besides you is this." And it was very sweet. And so I think that I have a lot of very fabulous possessions, but that one thing I think I would, I keep it actually pretty close to the door. So it's interesting. I could really grab it and go.
In these times, you've got to have you've got to be ready to make a quick exit
Hopefully,
at all times.
there's no need. Hopefully there's no need.
That's adorable story. Thank you, Katie.
Well, probably that Giacometti table I told you about, but
it's too
Robert,
heavy, dear.
Yeah, you're gonna get a hernia.
I don't know if I can move fast enough, but I have a beautiful pair of 18th century French needlework Cora Ginsberg embroidered pelmets that I bought at the Winter Antique Show. Back then it was the Winter Antique Show, before Peter built her house. So I bought them. I knew I wanted them for my bedroom. I said, "Peter, here, this is going to be the size of our windows. So, you know, have at it." But they're tacked up on the wall. So I don't know, the Giacometti table or the Cora Ginsberg needlework.
No. And Robert,
I don't think I would take anything. My dogs, I don't care about, I don't care about possessions that way.
Yeah.
I think that, I think also being French and having gone through all sorts of things, I think you've seen your houses being pulverized through wars or confiscated. I don't think you get attached to anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm attached to the stuff that I have today because I like what I'm surrounded with. But if the house burned down, I think I'll take my dogs and I would leave it, and that's all I take. And my passports. That's all I would take.
Which at some point will actually be useful again, passports. And also, you know, if you lose your possessions, it's just an excuse to go out and buy some new ones. So
you know, I was asking you earlier if you had read The Hare with the Amber Eye, and you know that my grandmother was an FOC, and so I always was interested in that. When she was interviewed in the book, because they said, "Why didn't you try to get all your stuff back?" And she said, "Who cares? gone. And I kind of like that. I said, it's gone, it's gone. You know, you can't be attached to these things. You'll make it again, you'll have it again. And then why being it, you know, it's gone, it's gone. So I think you have to always look to a degree. And also it's well insured, so.
Most important. There's your answer.
I have to say, Hair with Amber Eyes is one of my favorite books of all time, and I actually have a little, and I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm a writer. I'm a talker. Netsuke or
Netsuke.
Netsuke. I actually have a little ivory Netsuke that was my great grandparents. It's a little carved lion with a ball in its mouth, or maybe it's a dog that, and the ball shakes. And actually, I brought it with me, you know, in March when we left the city, and I had it with me. And then I couldn't, you know, in the sort of rush to pack up, I couldn't for months and months find my Netsuke, and I did find it ultimately. I shoved it in.
But you see, that's the thing about objects is that they sort of attach you too much to the material, and if you are detached from it, and I think for us, the business that we are in, it's all about material stuff. So it's what we do. But then I don't think that being attached to it is a good thing, because you limit yourself more than you should, I think, in my opinion. Well, and I think that.
Yeah, sentimentality. I mean, Edith Wharton warned about, you know, sort of becoming attached to the things but you, you know, the things that you inherit. You know, some of us put so much value on that we overlook the fact that it's either weighing us down or it's just plain ugly. So it's sort of freeing to kind of not get too attached to anything.
But so listen, I would be very, very upset if somebody came and broke anything in my house. But you know, it's sort of.
Right. But I know I said this was the last question, but can I ask you all, before we started taping this, you all were wearing masks, and I don't know, maybe it will be, you'll feel too ridiculous, but oh yeah, this will be a winter show first. So Robert, that's pretty styling. So.
Isn't that cool? So we wear it in the office, so like that, you know, we can see expressions on faces.
All right. Love it. Although, you know, when you go out in public, you supplement it with, yeah. So that, you know.
Here we are.
Yeah, fantastic.
You know, the thing is that I go on job sites and I see people who don't wear their mask, and I think, how idiotic could you be? We are 6 months away from getting a vaccine. Why take the risk? Why take the chance? Why risking anything?
Right.
All right. Well,
I love
we're doing a little stylish mask testimonials here. So you look very chic, all three of you. So
thank you.
And you know, that's all that counts in this day of Zoom, that you look chic from here to here, and you masked or maskless, you all do. So thank you.
This is when you stand up and you realize that you wear your pajama pants on.
All right, that will not be my really last question, to show me what you all are wearing, you know, down below the camera. But I'm sure, you know, it's all as wonderful and lovely as you three are. Thank you so much for joining us today.
So nice to see you, Tony. So nice to see you, David and Katie.
Yes, lovely
to be together.
I'm so appreciative of the Winter Show of asking us, you know, just an excuse to like sit here and gab with three of the people I most admire in this world. So, you know, this was just super fun, and hope we can recreate it sometime soon, actually in the flesh. So
thank you.
You all take care, and
thank you, Tony.
Take care and be safe.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye.